Hi guys, welcome to the next section, monitoring. Now we move on to the first video of this section that deals with types of monitoring. In the SRE book from Google, there are two types of monitoring defined: black box monitoring and white box monitoring. This is generally accepted by everyone, leading to a solid amount of tools that are clearly differentiated around white box and black box monitoring. One of the best comparisons I've ever heard on white box versus black box monitoring is the diagnosis of a bone fracture. When you first go to the doctor, he only has access to your black box metrics. That is, does the area have any bump? Is it painful on movement? Then, once the initial diagnosis has been pronounced, the next step is getting X-rays from the area. Now we can confirm whether the bone is broken, and if it is, what is the impact in the system. The X-rays are the white box monitoring that the doctor is using. First, let's see black box monitoring. Black box monitoring is the type of monitoring that observes a system from outside without having to look into how the system is built. These metrics are the first ones that impact the users and the first external symptoms that something is going wrong in our application or server. Among the metrics that can be used for black box monitoring, we can find latency and throughput. These two metrics are the holy grail of black box monitoring. The latency is how long it takes our system to respond. If we're looking at an HTTP server, from the very first time that we sent the request, the time when the server on the other side of the line replies is what we understand as latency. If we're looking at an HTTP server, from the very first time that we sent the request to the time when the server on the other side of the line replies is what we understand as latency. This metric is a fairly interesting one because it is the absolute truth about how the users see our system. The bigger the latency is, the worse the experience they get. Throughput is extremely related to the latency. Basically, it is the number of requests that our software can serve per time unit, usually per second. This measure is a critical one for capacity planning, and you are discouraged to measure it in real time in a running system. It pushes a lot of load through the system, which is surely going to affect the response time for live users. In general, throughput is measured at the performance testing stage of our application, which might be tricky. The hardware for testing has to match production, and the dataset for the database has to be similar to production. The performance testing step is usually overlooked by many of the companies as it is fairly expensive. This is why pre-production is usually used for capacity testing in order to guess the amount of hardware needed in production. Nowadays, this is less problematic. With auto-scaling groups in the cloud infrastructure, it becomes less of a problem, as the infrastructure is going to scale on its own when needed. These metrics are fairly simple to understand. Even though they play a key role in the error response time, they might not be the first indicators of problems. Next, monitoring type is white box monitoring. White box monitoring is the monitoring that needs to know about how the system is built in order to raise alerts on certain events happening inside our application or infrastructure. These metrics are quite fine-grained. Once we've been alerted, they are the answer to the main questions of a post-mortem analysis. Where is the problem? What is causing the problem? Which flows are affected? What can we do to avoid this in the future? Among other metrics, a fairly interesting set of examples are function execution time, errors per time unit, requests per time unit, memory usage, CPU usage, hard drive usage, and I/O operations per time unit. There is an endless number of white box metrics to ensure the stability of our system. There are almost too many, so we usually need to pick the right ones in order to avoid the noise. An important detail here is the fact that when a black box monitoring metric gives an abnormal reading, there is always a white box metric that can be used to diagnose, but it is not true the other way around. A server can have a spike in the memory usage due to an internal problem without impacting the users. One of the most important artifacts in white box monitoring are the logging files. These files are the ordered chain of events happening in our software. Usually, they are the first line of attack to diagnose problems related to our software. The main problem with log files is the fact that they are stored on production servers, and we should not access them on a regular basis just to check the log files, as it is a security threat on its own. It only takes an open terminal to a server forgotten by someone to give access rights to the wrong person.